Bandits, terrorists, gunmen, a daredevil army of killers has been called everything in Nigeria, and their devastation has been reaching. Now, royalty, the lowest in the society, the middle class, the high-powered, rulers and followers have tasted a piece of the bile, directly or by association. On Sunday, the military, designed to protect against the incursion of these dangerous elements, was the victim. 11 soldiers were killed, 3 members of a vigilante group who also lost their lives in that particular attack. Security in Nigeria, in the northwest and in Kaduna State, is in its poorest state ever. With the attack on the military barely a week after the Abuja-Kaduna train attack, was the hope for the future. Who's next? The question that sends shivers down spines. Welcome to VSA. I'm Sulaiman. Well, in a signal released on Monday by the Nigerian military, it revealed that terrorists had attacked one of its bases. The military base at Polowai along Kaduna Birning Road in Birning Gwari local government area of the state was under the siege of terrorists. According to the signal, the terrorists made incursions into the base around 4:45 p.m. on Sunday and used rocket-propelled grenades and other sophisticated weapons during the attack. Now, the gun duel lasted at least 3 hours, and the military had a reinforcement at 9 p.m. on Sunday night. The Northwest and Kaduna State have become a shadow of its old bubbly self as terrorist attacks have become endless. Barely a week ago, there was an attack on a train in Kaduna with at least 7 people killed and many more injured. A lot of travelers were also kidnapped in that very unfortunate incident. The Nigerian government has struggled to find a solution to insecurity in the country for more than a decade, as successive governments can't find a lasting solution. Joining me to look at this is retired Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, who's a security risk consultant, and pretty much later, Kabir Adamu, another security expert, will join me. Commodore Ayuba, good to see you, and thanks for your time as always. Yet another attack, and this time on a military base. Why is the Nigerian government and the military, struggling to contain terrorists?
Thank you very much, Sulai, for having me once again. It's a very sad commentary at this time in our national history that we experienced repeated attacks by terrorist organizations who dwell among us. And unfortunately, the nature of terrorism, the nature of asymmetric warfare makes it extremely very difficult to identify to the highest degree those who are perpetrating this crime. And of course, sadly, most of the areas where this incident has taken place is around a geographic area known as Kaduna. And of course, we have all the ripple effects around Zamfara, Niger, and even some suburbs of the federal capital. It is difficult for the military, from my experience, to police 24 hours, 365 one-quarter days, the whole territory of Nigeria, and more so when we have all sorts of security challenges in almost all the 36 states of the Federation. So it's something that requires rethinking, new thinking and new approaches. It looks like sometimes complacency. Fortunately, it is our brothers, our husbands, sisters, mothers that are getting killed every day on all sides of the divide, military, civilian population.
You know, let me jump in here, Commodore Ayuba. Sorry to cut you there, because I see the picture, and that is why we're having this conversation. A lot of Nigerians and Africans are concerned. We can't be losing those, you know, meant to protect us, especially going by the sacrifices some of their colleagues have always paid. Now, these attacks, Commodore Ayuba, seem to have gone levels higher in terms of strategy. So the question some Nigerians are asking, are these mere local criminals now, or Boko Haram, you know, that has actually taken this, you know, fight notches higher against the Nigerian state?
It's obvious that the action, this terror action is premeditated, it was well planned, and it is one of the signatures of a very, very dangerous terrorist organization. Indications are pointing at a splinter group, a new emerging group, the Ansaru. Definitely the hands of Boko Haram is very clear. Their fingerprints, their signature, and the pattern of fighting. It's obvious that this is a terror attack, considering the way it was planned, considering the way the passengers were targeted, singled out, and removed from the train. Information that have reached us so far indicate that the first-class compartments were the main targets of these terrorists. So it means that they already have idea of who is in the train and what they really want to do. There's desperation in the air. They appear to need new resources. And how do they fund their activities? Mainly from ransom taking, other criminal activities like human trafficking and other sources, sponsors, and from donors. This group are not spirits. And I keep saying it at every opportunity. How will 200 motorcycles move in this country carrying 2 to 3 fighters over such a vast territory, unchallenged, unnoticed? It begs for a lot of answers, and it interrogates the character of our security intelligence, especially, and its responses.
You know, Commodore, you were spot on there, because earlier some of the conversations you know, we had with some Nigerians, they also shared the same concern. Some you know, asked, have we suddenly have in our midst motorbikes that have the best of silencers without you knowing that these motorbikes are approaching, especially in their hundreds. Now, the kind of weapons they possess beggars belief. Now, do you think the Nigerian government is dealing with an international network of terrorists in the Northwest? Now, you made allusion to a group or a possible splinter group of the Ansaru, and also looking at maybe a terror group like Boko Haram. What could be the pointers so that the government and those in such locality can start understanding what exactly they're dealing with at the moment?
Well, one of the biggest indicators is the fact that groups mass themselves in specific areas. Even the villages surrounding this theater, this area where the last incident took place, had already had an inkling of an imminent attack. The terrain in the Kaduna environment is not that densely vegetated. it's possible for you even at night to see at least a or more. Because the land is mainly savanna and with a few trees here and there. So the thing is that these people live in communities. They also have their hiding places in the forest. The locations which I believe should be known to intelligence community, and the issues surrounding them is how to attack these locations without generating public outcry and without causing future issues at the International Court of Justice in future about killing of innocent civilians. It's a difficult thing, and it's also something that requires a new way, a new approach to deal with this nature of terrorists that have emerged all of a sudden and would stop at nothing but to try to discredit the government and make nonsense of all the achievements of government so far. And they are unrelenting. So it is good to take the battle back to them and give them a pound of flesh. And that requires a lot of robust responses, which I believe are ongoing, and we may not be able to discuss deeply into this.
You know, your belief is well placed, but again, you know, the worry here has to do with, you know, statements, specifically from the Kaduna State Governor, Nasir El-Rufai. You know, he said it after last week's attack that the Nigerian army always gets intelligence from the agencies, but doesn't seem to act in good time. That's something that should worry anyone, isn't it?
Particular operations that are going on right now. But the responses are there, but a state of emergency on Kaduna State. So this is where I think we need to look at now. To declare an emergency, there is no doubt that the whole of Kaduna and its adjoining states are already infested with these terrorist organizations, and they will stop at nothing to carry out their.
Well, I think, Commodore Ayuba, we'll take a moment. We'll come back to you so that we can wrap up. There seemed to be a glitch in the connection to Commodore Ayuba. For those just joining us, this is VSA here on News Center Television. We're looking at security situation in Nigeria. Is actually responding to same. Stay with us when we return. Well, our home stretch with Commodore Ayuba here on VSA, looking at the security situation in Nigeria. Apologies again, before we went on the break, Commodore Ayuba was letting us in on, you know, some of the possibilities of what Nigeria is dealing with. And quickly here, Commodore Ayuba, the collateral damage, which you also spoke about, in your opening, especially locals living in the areas habited by these terrorists may be an issue, no doubt. But how should the military deal with this?
Well, in the first instance, we must begin to look at the spectrum of counter-terrorism operations once again. The military should not really be at the forefront of these counter-terrorist operations. We have had problems with the abdication of responsibilities of other security agencies, mainly the police, the Civil Defense Corps, other agencies that are supposed to be paramilitary, that are supposed to hold terrain. Most of these agencies have vacated their duty posts, therefore leaving a vast territory ungoverned and undefended. So when the military goes in for any operation now, it has to go it alone, trying to carry out all the entire spectrum of counter-terrorism. It is the manpower, it is the number of equipments that will be required, and especially close air support from the Air Force. It is the response time that is also part of what we need to improve on, because the air assets they don't just scramble them. They must be prepared for specific operations and armed specifically. So the issue now is that if you do not declare a state of emergency, it will be difficult for the military to sectorize and move into these areas, knowing that if they give instructions that no one should use this road, anybody they see there, legitimately by that state of emergency declaration, they will know that that person or group of persons are terrorists, and they will take them out without being held liable for shooting civilian targets. Then the issue of number. The Nigerian Army cannot police Nigeria with the strength that it has now. And so other forces are also coming in to join the army. So, and then most of the operations we see are tri-service in nature. So we cannot prevent attrition in battle or in cases of, in attempts to counter violent extremism, such as this terrorism issue is bringing on. But the truth is, why now? Why the upscaling when a lot of efforts have been put into thawing out and reducing terrorist influences?
You know, let me jump in here. Apologies. Let me jump in here, Commodore Ayuba. Now you're talking about some very workable possibilities. Another thing here has to do with the people. Do you think the government is doing enough to sensitize the people, especially because if the military or other agencies like the police, the DSS, or the NSCDC decide to move in, have we done enough, by speaking, talking with the people to have the full import of what the country is dealing with?
Well, a lot of efforts have been made in the past to win hearts and minds of the local populace. But also, we've seen a lot of scenarios where entire communities had been wiped out by terrorist organizations, groups in reprisal for communities providing information about their movements and activities to the military. So there is a sort of trust deficit between the people and, of course, the government agencies, that includes the military as it is. So it will take another cycle of effort to get the populace to trust that if they provide information, and such information will be treated with absolute confidentiality, and that they will not get hit or killed, or their families do not get kidnapped and attrited. So this is where the trust deficit issues have, to my mind, and from all evidence that we have seen, is playing a very negative role. People would rather watch things go by. These terrorists even collect taxes from communities, and they force them to labor, to farm, and then just in exchange for their lives and a bit of their livelihood. That is happening in our land. So there's need for us to take a decisive action beyond proclamations. There is need for decisive action to life.
You know, quickly here, how much, how much is enough or is so much for the government to combat this? The Nigerian government so far said it spent more than 4 trillion naira in 7 years, and the results aren't there yet for Nigerians to see. And looking at what you just highlighted, the military also has its own intelligence units. Is there a paucity of, training or personnel on the part of the military?
I do not think there's a paucity of training. There are lots of intelligence training going on, both locally and internationally. Also, we must remember that the primary role of the military is territorial defense of Nigeria from without. And the internal security issues have now taken away all the primary tasks of the armed forces, the army within the borders, prevent aggression from outside, the Navy from maritimely, the Air Force from the air. So the intelligence training military intelligence training alone cannot solve the problem. There is also need for the civilian dimensions of intelligence. That's why you have the National Intelligence Agencies, you have the DSS, you have other security agencies, even the police have its own intelligence units. There's need to create synergy and perhaps begin to do a central intelligence assessment of information and dissemination, because somewhere along the line, and it's not alien to Nigeria, we saw it in 9/11, where inter-agency rivalries were manifest, and of course, our agencies were jostling for victory trophies, to be given the trophy that they were the best. And I suspect that that's still on, and there is need to harmonize. And then the office of the NSA must be try to rejig itself and go into this with a lot more vigor than it is, because the issue of porosity of our borders has not been addressed. And of course, the influx of people of all dimensions, knowing that the Sahelian region now, they are doing a lot of cleaning up in some of these places. All the people find solace here, because we always, the big brother attitude, people are harboring these foreign fighters. All our forests can have dimensions. I don't think there's no part of our forest that we cannot survey or we have not surveyed. So when there's need to invade the forest with a lot of vigor, it should not be a problem. But then, going back to the issue of funding, no matter the amount that has been given in billions of naira, if you now change over to the US dollar, which is the base currency that we use to purchase equipment, you will find out that it can do it can only scratch the surface. You know, we are talking about engaging people in combat. You see how much well-armed these terrorists are, going about with bandoliers upon bandoliers of ammunition. And that is not available to our own troops in that manner, because when the cost of defense spending, the economics of national security is huge, and we must be able to stop certain things to concentrate on these operations. If I tell you all these rail extensions all over the place, I did say it in some of the media I've been to, that there's no need building long rail lines that you cannot secure. Commit these monies to ending this terrorism once again, then we can go back to reconstruction of the nation. When you do the reconstruction, then you can continue to extend these developmental infrastructural programs. But as it is, there is need for a whole of society action, not just the military, not just government. Every Nigerian must see this as a challenge, and we have to run the gauntlet to be able to overcome
and that
this.
That is why Nigerians definitely will need, daily information in the fight. Time was during the time of Nigeria's former president, Goodluck Jonathan. They had this coordinated, weekly security briefings by the DSS, the police, and the National Orientation Agency at that point in time, led by Mike Omeri. Quickly here, as we wind down, you've been in the military before, retired Commodore Ayuba. How easy is it to have the military now as a victim of such attacks? I can almost imagine how you'll feel seeing this happening to a profession you hold so dear.
It is pathetic. It is sad, because you only need to take a visit to some of the barracks, and you will see how many children have been orphaned, because of course you find soldiers getting married to themselves, and husband and wife deployed in this battle, and then you see both father and mother dead, the children are orphaned. The military takes up the responsibility, and these are part of the costs that are not very visible. The cost of looking after, maintaining, and providing for the welfare of the victims of this war. So it is something that is unprecedented, but Nigeria also is not alone in this terror war. Everybody is seeing how the world is playing out things. All we need to do is to rally around our armed forces, and probably, Sulai, the people must volunteer now to fight. People must volunteer. Patriotism without action is virtually, to me, meaningless. You can see what's happening in Ukraine, where people volunteer. In fact, the government insists that if you are 16 and above, up to 60, you cannot leave. You must stay to fight. When will our level of patriotism get to this particular standard? We have no other country to go to, so we must brace up to do this battle once and for all. And let's get peace, the most desired peace, back into our dear country, so that once again we might begin to experience the once lovely prosperity which some of us had witnessed in the early days of the national growth and development.
Well, it's a fine place for us to wrap up this. Thank you for your time, retired Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, security risk consultant, for speaking with us here on Village Square Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come on the program, another security expert joins us. Kabir Adamu, join us. Well, it does hurt badly and deeply so. 19 soldiers were wounded during the attack and 3 armored personnel carriers burnt by the terrorists. This is a means to decimate the ranks and strength of the military, as they also went away with weapons owned by the military. Wounded soldiers have been evacuated to the Birnin-Gwari General Hospital and 271 Nigerian Air Force Medical Center. The infiltration of heavy and light weapons into Nigeria has been a matter of contention on roads, at airports, on rail tracks, in marketplaces, and even in military bases. There's an infiltration of terrorists into the northwest. I'm now being joined by Kabir Adamu, security expert. Kabir, good to see you. Not too good a time for Nigerians. You have also been one of these the voices warning and asking everyone to ramp up, telling us is everybody's business. But today, here we are. What's the solution? What can the Nigerian government do to turn this period around?
Thank you, Sulaiman. And yes, you're right. For quite a while now, we have been highlighting the imminent danger, the fact that we are facing a threat element, a threat factor that is determined, and that if we do not contain, would continue to wreak havoc. In particular, in the aftermath of the presidential directives around October last year for the military to go after the so-called bandits or terrorists, depending on what you want to call them, we kept on emphasizing and warning that they've been dislodged and they seem to be angry over something. And so they would continue to attack helpless communities and would continue to wreak havoc. We need to contain them. And we went ahead to give solutions. Some of the solutions we gave, first and foremost, we need to be a little bit more strategic in the way we think and the way we approach security. Most of our reactions have been knee-jerk reactions that are meant to be stopgaps that unfortunately have now become permanent solutions. So if you look at just as an example, Operation Safe Haven, which was meant to be a short-term operation, has ended up being more than a decade now. Likewise, the one in Maiduguri, currently Operation Hadinkai, it has transcended almost a decade. So that is, I think, one of the major challenges. We need to be more strategic. We came out with a revised national security strategy, which appeared to be modern and which appeared to recognize that the threat has metamorphosed, so the strategy too should be adequate. Unfortunately, that document, which was introduced in 2019, is yet to be implemented. The second point is the need to introduce M&E, especially metrics within the security sector. What we have at the moment, and it's been demonstrated clearly that the budget for security is increasing almost at an astronomical rate. From around less than $1 trillion, security is gulping almost 2-point-something trillion at the moment. And that's just a component of security. By the time you add the security votes at the federal and at the state level, you find out that we're dealing with probably up to 3 or 4 trillion naira for security only. Now, how is that accounted for? What accountability measures, what M&E measures for in terms of metrics, in terms of key performance indicators do we have to ensure that those scarce resources are actually being used for the purposes that they are meant for? If we're to go by the numbers of Nigerians dying, then I can sit here and tell you with all sense of responsibility that those monies are not being used judiciously. Last year, about 9,000 Nigerians died. And this year, so far, we're counting almost 4,000 Nigerians. So if that money was being used adequately and judiciously, we wouldn't be seeing that. Number 3 is the need for accountability in terms of responsibility for the office holders. If we have a customs whose responsibility is to protect our borders, and if you go to the market today, you can still find smuggled items. We still are unable to account for the refined petroleum products that we bring into the country. I've had virtually all government officials complain about that, yet we have a custom that every year we give a budget for the protection of that borders, then something is wrong. That's how you can pick all the 27 ministries, departments, and agencies. Now, that is at the government level. At the community level and at the family level, there are also issues that we need to address. The value system that we've allowed to deteriorate, that is not the responsibility of governance. That is the responsibility that lies with both the community and families. And so the blame actually is all to share. So if you ask for solutions, these are the various things that we need to change around. And perhaps if we do, frankly, there's nothing wrong with drawing a line. And once we draw the line, call a spade, that look, no more this type of impunity that we're seeing across the country, both at the national level, at the state level, then at the community, and then even at the family level. These guys, the non-state actors, they are not ghosts. They are children of certain individuals. What happened? Who failed in his responsibility to bring up children that would be useful to society? So, Sulaiman, it's a multitude of issues and the solutions too should be that complex and
Kabir, listening to you talk, some of the key things that should be going through the minds of a lot of Africans, Nigerians especially, would be, aren't there lessons learned? It doesn't look as if Nigeria can't actually fix this. But again, looking at the numbers, over 9,000 died last year, and so far, this is just the beginning of April, and over 4,000 are already gone in this fight. That's a big one. So the issues of mercenaries, especially in the areas of intelligence gathering, has been brought up now. Is the Nigerian military capable of dealing with these challenges alone? And now that you're talking about the border, the family unit, the government, because there's a potpourri of issues, Kabir.
So no, in my understanding of security, I do not, when I speak of security, I do not, frankly, the first, especially when I'm talking of internal security, the military is not the first organization that I even think about. The military would come, behind several other organizations. The police is the first agency, and frankly, I'm tired of hearing the excuses that we're giving the police. They collect money. And without saying too much, the police, if it were making adequate use of the resources that comes its way, it's not going to be a poor police in Nigeria. And anybody who thinks I don't know what I'm saying should just try to understand this point. Go to the oil companies, go to banks, go to the houses of influential persons within the society, go to commercial organizations. You see police officers, the list that they are paid, it's about 70,000 from those organizations. Now, if per head they're being paid 70,000, and we do a rough estimate of about 100,000 of them that are deployed for such operations, multiply that by 70,000 and see how much you would come up with monthly. That goes, well, not necessarily into the coffers of the police, that probably goes into somebody's hand. Likewise, when events are being organized, police are deployed there. Those monies are paid for those services. So again, I think the issue is one of adequate use of resources. Funding, yes, we've come to accept that funding is a challenge, but in my honest opinion, I don't think funding is a challenge. What is the challenge is the leakages within the system that allows the monies that are being generated not to go to the organization, but to go to the pockets of individuals. So again, the military is not the way out. These organizations that we, for some reasons, have allowed to be in the back pedal of security management, internal security management, we need to look more closely at them. The military is overwhelmed. We have placed too much responsibility for internal security on the military. They are fighting at several fronts, and in terms of numbers, they are not enough. And some of these challenges are not even challenges that are suited for military operations. Intelligence gathering that you mentioned is especially for internal security. It's not really the function of the military. There are organizations such as the SSS, the civil defense, that are better suited. There are, at the last count, about 10,000 private security operatives. All of these 10,000 ideally should be reporting to the Civil Defense Corps. Now imagine a situation where we're able to harness the intelligence from this 10,000 personnel. There is no house that you go to, there is no business entity that you go to that you will not see a private man-guarding company. Now, if we were harnessing the intelligence from that, imagine the quantity of intelligence we'll be getting. Now, Sulaiman, that is just at the very basic level. If we transgress this conversation further to start talking about intelligence fusion, believe me, Sulaiman, would have a situation where even the leaders of these so-called non-state actors and terrorist groups that were fighting, when they sneeze, we'll be able to know that they're sneezing. When they cough, we'll be able to know that they're coughing. But because of the impunity I mentioned earlier on, and this absence of M&E within the system, we don't know this at the moment. And what really irks me is the fact that nobody is even talking about these issues. If we allow this to continue, that is how, unfortunately, this would continue for the next decade or more.
You know, Kabir, we really can't run away from this. And gathering intelligence without utilizing same makes nonsense of it all. And listening to Governor El-Rufai, you know, recently, he said that the military knows where these terrorists are. Perhaps maybe speaking from, you know, information at his disposal. But how can the country, you know, work with, you know, intelligence gathered so far and perhaps also move in without some collateral damage, knowing that these people operate within communities?
So other countries that address this type of issues, what they have, and we have them, are tactical units. I believe that in virtually all our armed, you know, security departments, there are tactical units. And amazingly, every year we do release budgetary allocations to these organizations for these tactical units. So that is where they come in. If we have intelligence regarding the whereabouts of this, you know, gunmen, just like Rufai mentioned, and I can corroborate this. I know that we do have that intelligence, even within the industrial security space. A couple of months ago, one of the non-governmental organizations, CDD, headed by Hidayat, released a documentary where journalists actually interviewed two major gunmen leaders, bandit leaders. And it was amazing that they went to them and interviewed them. Sheikh Gumi has demonstrated clearly that these gunmen are accessible. So we know where these people are. It's not for a failure of intelligence. It's just that first thing I mentioned, the impunity, the lack of accountability, and the fact that you know, we allow this type of impunity to go unpunished. If not, by now, those that are responsible should have gone after these persons, either arrested them or where they resist arrest, kill them. They cannot be killing Nigerians and then we allow it to happen. So, I mean, the point is clear. It's not an absence of intelligence. It's just a failure to use that intelligence. And the reason why that is persistent is because we are not penalizing impunity in this country.
And Nigerians who spoke then when the government started talking about repentant terrorists, they're now saying, didn't we tell you that this was something pretty too fast? Do you think this move by the government has helped the situation? And if there are repentant, how is it that they can still, you know, go back and take up arms against the state?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Sulaiman. There is no documentary evidence that indicates anyone who went through Operation Safe Corridor has gone back to his former ways. In other words, he has taken a weapon and he's now fighting the state. And I am emphasizing on documentary evidence, both in the public space and in the civil space. I have not come across that evidence. Now, that is not in any way saying I'm comfortable with what is going on in Operation Safe Corridor.
It's just quickly, before I let you continue, well, in as much as people haven't actually found any document, that statement can be credited to the senator in Borno State, who openly spoke and said some of these people have actually gone back to take up arms against, you know, their community. Talking about Senator Aliu Ndume.
I have my remarks to make about that, but this is a public space, so I would
Absolutely.
reserve it. I try to be as pragmatic and scientific as possible in my analysis, and I am not keen to be pedestrian in responding to some of these developments. I insist that there is no documentary evidence as yet to indicate that anyone who went through Operation Safe Corridor has gone back to pick weapons. Yeah, there are challenges, and I know that the Borno State government is trying to address those challenges regarding acceptance of repentant, quote unquote, members of either the Jamaat al-Ahli Dawati wal Jihad or the Islamic State in West Africa province. That's the challenge that we can't run away from, and it's a legitimate challenge. You can't, kill my brother, my sister, my mother, father, and then I come and accept you wholeheartedly without any form of reconciliation. So, but the good thing is the Borno State government is attempting to address that, and we have to commend the Borno State government for the very bold way it's attempting to address that. And I am hopeful that the international development organizations and humanitarian organizations will support the Borno State government in that regard. It's a Herculean task. It's something that requires a lot of effort. Communities that have suffered in the manner that Borno residents have suffered will not, easily forgive these members of both Jamaat al-Ahli wal Jihad and Islamic State in West Africa province. But having said that, I have looked at the concept note of Operation Safe Corridor. And by the way, that concept note was first introduced under the Goodluck Jonathan administration. The current World Trade Organization, DG, took that document. At that time, she was a cabinet minister in Nigeria, took that document to the General Assembly, and the entire world under the General Assembly looked at that document and endorsed it. And that is why we had funding from around about, if I remember well, 12 countries and several other international non-governmental organizations for the operation of Operation Safe Corridor. Now, what I don't know, and that is why I made that proviso in my earlier remark, whether what is being implemented at the moment is what was conceived of under that concept note. One of the challenges I know, and I have had to speak about that, is the overwhelming influence of the military in the operation of Operation Safe Corridor. I don't think that was the initial ideas of those who conceived of that operation. There are, to my knowledge, several government departments, most of them civilian government departments, that are better organized and who have functions that would handle the operations of Operation Safe Corridor. Yes, the military is necessary because they need to provide both security and ensure that the clients, as they are called, go through the system in a manner that is acceptable to them. But in terms of the face, the voice, and the managers of the operation, I don't think that was what was conceived when it was. So perhaps a little bit more transparency by those who are operating the system will reduce the way Nigerians conceive or view of the Operation Safe Corridor. But in my concluding remarks on this question, what I would like to say is that de-radicalization and counter-radicalization, which Operation Safe Corridor seeks to achieve, is a well-accepted means of counter-terrorism. And in this instance, our approach has been well commended across the world.
So quickly here, Kabir, where does the police come in all of this? Because you were spot on and specific when you mentioned the police, that in all of this, the military should almost come last.
Well, the police is the lead agency for internal security operations. And so it should be at the front of the internal security operations. That is what happens all over the world. We have a peculiar situation in Nigeria that frankly needs to be corrected. We put the policing function, and I'm using my words carefully now, policing function and not the Nigerian police, has been subsumed by about 7 different organizations. And so you have organizations like the road safety, like the civil defense, and several others, to an extent, even the immigration, that are carrying out policing functions, but different from the police, and in some cases are in different ministries than the police. So you have the police under the Ministry of Police Affairs, and then you have all the others under the Ministry of Interior. So that makes coordination of policing functions a little bit difficult. Because, I mean, if there are two ministers that are handling these functions, then, I mean, it becomes a little bit difficult for both operational as well as, strategic coordination. And so that's one of the major issues. The second point is the lack of delineation of the functions of this organization. So you have, in several cases, instances where they are operating in silos, because of this absence of the delineation of their functions. And I know that there is a committee, I can't remember the name of the chairman of that committee, that looked into these issues. And I know that the current administration is attempting to implement the recommendations of that committee. But as you know, a lot of things in Nigeria, sometimes the desire to be politically correct makes it a little bit difficult to implement this. But I know that committee recommended the merging of some of these organizations and in certain instances collapsing them into, delineating their functions more clearly. But even if this administration doesn't succeed in doing it, I'm hoping that the parliament would look at the laws, because the parliament has the power to legislate, to review the laws, and where necessary to even, revise them and make them more amenable to our democratic expectations. So I'm hoping that irrespective of whether that committee recommendation for the delineation of these functions is done or not, the parliament would at some point. And we must commend especially the 9th Assembly for attempting to look at some of these laws. It did look at the Police Act, and we know we have a new Police Act now that is more amenable to our democratic aspirations. So I'm hoping that it would also go to the other security departments, look at the laws that set them up. Most of them were established either on the colonial era or under military dictatorships. And so their mandate is sometimes not amenable to our democratic aspirations. So all of these is what make the policing function a little bit difficult. I know one of the issues that I haven't spoken about is funding, but I mentioned this earlier on. And this new administration, the Buhari administration, has institutionalized the Police Trust Fund. And despite the teething problems that was faced by the Police Trust Fund, we've seen it started functioning. There is room for improvement in the manner with which it has started functioning, especially with regards to the equipment it's attempting to get for the police. I believe that hardware is just one element of the policing function. Right. There are several other elements beyond hardware. I talked about M&E earlier on. Training is another issue. There are institutions, the nature and the very dilapidated state of those institutions. All these are areas that the Police Trust Fund need to look at.
All right, okay, Kabir, it's a fine place for us to say many thanks for being such nice company. We do hope to have the police join us so that at least they can speak, and the people need to be spoken to. The people need to also understand how they can also come in and help in the fight against what Nigeria is dealing with. Kabir Adamu, a security expert, he joins us from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. That's it on the program today. You can catch up on some of the past editions on our YouTube channel here on News Central Television. I'm Sulaiman Aledeh. See you again.